an additional stage emerged, and we call that the green pluralistic stage. And people realized in a way that their perception, as we showed earlier in this organon, their perception of reality, their interpretation of their reality, creates, in a sense, the reality. Maybe not necessarily the real things out there, but if we look at a tree, how we perceive that tree and what we ultimately see and perceive, or what we smell, or what we hear, etc., has a lot to do with our cultural framing. And so in order to understand reality, we have to look inside and understand, how our feelings, our conditioning, our priming, if you will, our past experiences, our feelings, our past feelings. So we have an understanding of the amygdala, where all the past emotions are stored and things like that. And we also understand that all people have needs, and they're what we call being needs, or what Maslow put into the hierarchy of needs. And some people make long lists of different human needs, like connection, understanding, love, sexuality, communication, warmth. And so there are need inventories. They have 100 different needs. And as long as we're not projecting these needs onto others violently, that they have to meet our needs, that's basically fine, right? Everybody has these being needs. If we project our needs on others, we call that neediness, and we punish them, and then that's more a red expression, or maybe even a magical expression, or an amber expression. And so these pluralistic people at this level, and I'm wearing the green hat, which is the color for that, they shift their communication from goal-oriented objective rationality, which doesn't really exist in their world, to express subjective observations, feelings, unmet needs, and making requests rather than demands. And this is usually known as compassionate or nonviolent communication, as first practiced by Carl Rogers and others, and then Marshall Rosenberg wrote the book and created this kind of model of nonviolent communication, which is very powerful and very helpful for creating intimacy and love and understanding and connection, all the beautiful things we want in our relationships. And so here are 11 rules, sort of like for this form of nonviolent, compassionate communication. So first, you're not attached to any specific outcome other than authentic, empathetic human connection. You avoid criticism and shoulding, like you shouldn't do this, you should be that way, you should think that way. And we're avoiding denial of responsibility. Well, I'm not responsible for that. I'm not responsible for my feelings. So there is a high level of taking responsibility for our perception. And we're not making any kind of demands with threats or blame or punishment, as amber, for example, does, the blue amber. And there are declarations of who deserves reward or punishment. So it's a clear pushback against this blue level right or wrong thinking, right? Everybody's right from their own perspective. We do not provoke fear, shame, or guilt in others, and we do not mix what we observe with evaluations. So we're not saying things like, oh, when you came home, I thought you're such a caveman, or when you didn't bring me flowers, you're so ignorant, right? We're not labeling our observation, then judging the other person through our subjective evaluations. You're always, things like that, we avoid that. We make always I statements. When you didn't bring me flowers, I felt sad, for example, because I have a need for attention. Would you be willing to go to the store and buy me flowers? They understand that behind every request or demand that a person makes is an unmet need. And we're at this level, we are really trying to understand what need of that person was not met. So that's different from an interest, right, which is objective. The need is subjective, it cannot be questioned. And we focus on all the feelings. What feelings were created when this need was not met? And we wait until everything is expressed, we ask, is there anything else you want to express? So we become good listeners. We're not already forming answers in our head while we're listening. And sometimes men need to practice a little bit to maybe count to 10. When the other person, often a woman, stops speaking, you count to 10, then you ask, is there anything else? And if she says, no, that's really all I wanted to express, then it's your time to express your needs and your feelings and maybe making your requests after you stated your observations. And you also understand if somebody cannot listen to you in this empathetic, nonviolent, compassionate way, that they first need some empathy. So maybe you need to hold them for a while or go on a walk or just do something pleasant for them so that they can fill up their empathy container, their empathy bank account, if you will, so that they then can empathetically listen to you and also speak from an empathetic level. And people in this way of communicating, they listen actively and paraphrase, and they do not give advice, compare, educate, reassure, storytell, tell not to feel, sympathize, gather data, apologize. Instead, they share how they feel and what they need. And they do the same thing with their partner, not only themselves, like Red would do, right? This is what I feel, this is what I need. If you don't give it to me, I punch you in the face, or I leave you, or I punish you in some other ways. So they explore the inner beings of self-others, prioritize a more feminine, authentic human connection, and care over finding practical, rational solutions. They insist that individual subjectivity determines what is true, right? So it's no longer about objectivity and what is good, beautiful, and functional, as there are no absolute objective scientific, moral, or aesthetic truths, and everyone is equally right from their own perspective. So these first 6 levels we call first-tier consciousness. And what these first 6 levels have in common is they're all somehow need-based, right, or interest-based. And people at these first 6 levels, they all think that their particular level of defining what is good, true, beautiful, and functional and should be the way that everybody else defines it. So if everybody would be like me, green, or if everybody else would be like me, rational, orange, or if everybody else would be like me, mythic, follow the laws, law and order, follow the rules and the roles, and don't change things, don't take any risks, or if everybody like me would be in this red energy, right? If everybody takes care of their own happiness, then everybody's happy. They think that's the only way and the best way of communicating and to getting along with other people. And integral, which I use the yellow hat, it's sometimes also called the teal color, is the first stage that can see all these previous stages and can see that everybody is right from their own particular perspective, but people are not equally right. Like green, they think everybody's equally right from their own perspective, but integral says no. If you're green, you're much more loving than if you're red, for example, and you can, integrate more. Even though you think these earlier stages are wrong, at least you can see them, and then you try to pull people up to, let's say, if you're at the green level, you try to make everybody green, and orange tries to make everybody orange and pull green down to the orange level, right? So it's like a pulling up, pulling down, kind of like communication. So integral is the first level that doesn't do that, right? We say, okay, you're green and that's fine, and there's wonderful things there. You're orange, you contribute a lot to society, to our relationship, to our company, to our organization. You are blue. Maybe you make a great accountant, a great policeman, whatever, where we need to follow strictly the rules, not experiment much. And you're red, you're very creative and alive. And so we see a value in all these previous levels. But our communication on this level becomes, again, a little bit more masculine, focused on autonomy, rights, justice, rationality. And when when you get to this yellow level or teal level, you shift from judgment and being needy or having needs to being or interbeing, and you become curious. So first of all, you listen to other people, you try to understand from which of these four dimensions are people communicating from, and from what level of consciousness are others communicating. And so for people at the integral level, creating context by looking through this, what we call the aqua lens, which very simply put is, what of the four dimensions, and from what level of consciousness, creating that perspective is everything. Context is everything. So we can only understand a situation or a way of communicating or a conflict if we contextualize it. To become consciously competent about these perspectives in development are often very pragmatic and more interested in the map, actually, in their theory than the territory. So that can really put people off. And so they demand that other people are flexible and create open systems, and often have this utilitarian and pragmatic view on what is the greatest good, truth, beauty, and functionality for the largest number of people. And they consider what is true, what most of the experts who are really qualified in any particular field either agree on through scientific experiments and empirical studies and things like that, or what has persisted, the perennial wisdoms, which has persisted for thousands of years, which is often more coming from the East. So integral people communicate with others at their level of consciousness. They realize you cannot hear me up here. I have to, if you're blue, integral basically puts on the blue hat and speaks to the other person on their level of consciousness. And they make invitations. Have you considered that? What about that? And they acknowledge the healthy and valid aspects of their interlocutors, the people they talk with, at their respective stage, while trying to prevent them from imposing their limited views, in that case, let's say the blue person, their limited view onto the integral person and doing harm on others. So integral then acts in self-interest without imposing their own values and needs onto others. But when challenged, integral still rather wins the argument and loses the relationships, and sometimes finds themselves in these double binds. In other words, if you keep talking, you make the situation worse. If you don't say anything, you make the situation worse. And if you're in an intimate relationship, you can also not leave. And that's called the double bind. Gregory Bateson created this term, right, where it's like a no-win solution is possible. And as I just said, you cannot say anything. If you say something, you get punished. If you say nothing, you get punished, but you also cannot leave. And integral people are thus, in a way, interested in learning, healing, growing, and awakening, especially with other integrally informed people, and see every challenge as an AFGO, another fine growth opportunity, or whatever other F word you want to use. So they're a little bit with the drama triangle, right? They see everything as an opportunity to do what they're really interested in, is to learn, heal, grow, awaken. And to learn, heal, grow, and awaken. These are the big four. And then finally, we have this, what we usually give turquoise, but I don't have a turquoise hat, so I'm going to use a white hat. There's a philosopher named Alfred North Whitehead, which is a process philosopher, and probably more in this transpersonal stage. And so I'm just using the white hat here. And again, at this stage, people surrender to their environment. And so they are going beyond curiosity and become deeply compassionate and humble. So integral people can often come across as somewhat arrogant. I'm better than you, right? I lower myself to your level. And And there is often not by you create your own reality, it's your problem, right? If you would grow to the next higher level or become integral, then you wouldn't have all these problems. So your problem is not really totally my problem, even though if you want me to help you, I'm happy to help you. So integral is not pushing away other people, but if they're not really accepting the help from the integral person with the yellow hat, then sometimes they can be quite cold. So this shifts again on this transpersonal level, which again is more surrender to the environment and is what I call the interbecoming stage. So we're looking at potentials, what we can become out of certain situations. So it's compassionate and humble. They question their own limited views or event horizons, including the limits of experience, thought, knowledge, and language itself. So this is like a stage that's kind of hard to grasp, but we intuit into potentials and go beyond language or beyond what the map that we created. So we realize the map is not a territory and there are things outside the map or the map is not accurate enough. And so they become much more interested in the territory, let's say, of relationships again, and see themselves and others as part of an open, global, holonic, dialectical, emergent, evolving, and sometimes devolving, conscious and unconscious whole. Right? So we cannot know everything. There's a lot of things that we are unconscious of and that humans cannot even perceive really practically, like black holes or quantum physics or whatever it may be. We can only have theoretical concepts about it. Even color perception, right? We cannot really know what the color of a surface is. We can only measure the reflection of light, and we can, of course, understand somehow in our brain the qualia of a color is created, but it's really just inside of us. There is a part of what Roy Bhaskar calls the real, which we can never really perceive. We can only perceive what is actually arising in our awareness and what we can theorize about. And so the whole world is created of creative frictions and inevitable necessary conflicts, right? Without conflicts, nothing can emerge. So there is always a thesis, antithesis, a back and forth, out of which new potentials, new possibilities, advancements into novelty, Whitehead called that, emerges. And so people at this level are not just looking at situations through an integral lens, and they become what I call unconsciously competent. They're more in the now again and deeply compassionate and connected with everything that arises on all the levels without constantly framing it through an integral context, even though they can still do that when it is necessary, right? So they're not throwing away the map like Green likes to do and just be in the territory. They integrate more wholesomely or embody the territory with, and they still understand the map if necessary. So they are more interested in what they do not know and assume that they are at least partially wrong when there is conflict. Thus, people on this level, the transpersonal level, they expand and revise the map as they are in the territory and find solutions through dialectical processes of thesis, antithesis, synthesis to advance into new possibilities and potentials by what's called absenting absences, bringing forth something that is not existing yet through creativity, through this openness, right? What's beyond our knowledge, our understanding. They recognize the importance of the co-creative and procreative couple to create more goodness, truth, beauty, and functioning in the world. So they're not only focused on cultural evolution, but also on biological evolution and for the importance of the couple. First, two people loving each other and finding understanding, agreement, getting along with each other, and then going from there to family, community, society. They make intersubjective and interobjective validity claims to what is good, true, beautiful, and functional by integrating healthy feminine descending and communal care, compassion, feelings, relationships. So that comes from more the green stage, as well as the healthy, not the toxic, but the healthy masculine, ascending, agentic, autonomy, rights, justice, and rationality at the level of all 7 chakras. So we bring at this level also the chakras into play. And people at this level weave bottom up, right? Go looking from down there, seeing possibilities up there, but also top down. And they weave that in what we may call a classic tantric or original tantric ways, and deeply resonate with the limited views of the previous developmental stages as parts of the whole, while continuously working to embody the healthy capacities. So they see the necessity for all people to live out their conflicts as part of their learning, healing, growing, and awakening, because often we only learn, heal, grow, and awaken when we suffer, but we also say, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, and they show compassion for the suffering of others and themselves, and give support when warranted without getting lost in the drama of the world and of others. So that is my take on communication, and logically, if you want to be in a healthy relationship, you want to be with someone who is at your level of consciousness development, so that you use the same validity claims to create mutual understanding and agree on what is good, true, beautiful, and functional, and you can learn, heal, grow, and awaken together. Thank you very much.